Hey everyone, welcome back to the FloTrack podcast. FloTrackPodcast@gmail.com is our email address. FloTrack.org/FloTrack podcast, where you can find all the videos and the audio version on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and wherever else you get your podcasts. I am Kevin Sully, joined by Gordon Mack. Gordon, good morning. How are you?
Yo, is it safe to say track is back? Is that what we're saying right now? Is track back?
Though the Diamond League did release a modified schedule with meets that are beginning on August 14th. Now, this does not include the Impossible Games, which is still the first meet internationally, although it's mostly just including athletes from Sweden and Norway. But Sweden and Norway are good enough in track for that to count as an international track meet. That's still scheduled for June 11th. But yes, the Diamond League did trot out a schedule here. Those of you watching can see the dates scrolling below us, which is a great new feature that we have here, and particularly helpful for this show because I don't even need to look up. I can say, hey, September 4th, Brussels. September 6th, Paris. Yeah, so not until August. So still plenty of time to go here. A couple of Diamond League meets did get scrapped here. Before we get into that, though, I wanted to ask you something about yesterday's episode. Is that okay if I take you back to yesterday's episode?
Let's take us back. Take me back.
Okay. I have a love-hate relationship with the Gordon Lincoln version of this podcast, but I'm also its number one fan. So it's both. It's a complex relationship. But I thought you guys did a good job yesterday going over those proposed NCAA cross-country changes, and you agreed for the first time on anything. Usually you don't even agree on the weather outside or what day you're recording. You guys have a really good way of disagreeing on everything. I want to know though, if you were in charge of this and you could pick any format for how the NCAA cross-country season would go, with obviously some constraints, right? You can't bend the space-time continuum. What would you do? How would you structure the season in your ideal world?
Well, the ideal situation would be that the NCAA champ. I don't. This is an opinion that most people would hate, but I think that the NCAA championship should only have like 12 teams. I want everyone on that starting line who's at the NCAA championships to be a team that could win. That's my
Okay,
own
so how would
opinion.
you structure the whole season then, leading into that? Would you keep it the same and then just let 12 teams? Would you change the qualifying process? Like if you we're picking all the different versions and proposals apart, but like how would you that's fine. That's a fine opinion to have. I just want to know how would you get there?
Well, the only I do think it's kind of cool to make conference champions automatically qualify or some system. But what I would want to do, this would be in order to make the regular season matter, you have to give an incentive to run well at the regular season, right?
Mhm.
You got to find a way to stop teams from running B teams all year round and just peaking for regionals, right? So, what's the best way to incentivize a team is you incentivize them with rest. So, what I would do is I don't know specifically, but I would design a scoring system or point system or whatever system where you have a chance to earn a bye to NCAAs if you have a successful regular season. So basically, there'll be regionals will be more about a play in than about a like so like say we basically I would find a way to give like a bye to like the top 5 teams at in the regular season, and then
Okay.
find a way to have a play in for the next 7.
Okay. So
That makes sense.
either a
Because
committee.
the whole situation is the only thing problem with NCAA cross. It's a good and it's a blessing and a curse, but it's a whole problem with running in general. Is that regular seasons don't matter in running, right? All that matters is the global championship. Like, who cares if we're talking about Diamond League, but in the end, and people are just paid to run well at the global championships. Same thing with
Yeah.
NCAA cross, even in NCAA track. You're not told to run fast at Brian Clay or at Mount Sac or at Penn Relays. You're told to run fast at NCAAs and conference
Josh
championships
Kerr
for
ran
that
pretty
matter.
fast. Josh Kerr ran
Yeah.
pretty fast at Brian Clay. So
So the and cross is even more because we're all like, oh, you can't run too far, it'll hurt your body,
Mhm.
mantra, like, because they always say you run, all these coaches are like, we can't race, but we can do like a workout that's twice as hard, and
Right.
that's
Yeah.
it's weird. But the idea is that how do we make the meets that are held in September and October and even in early November matter, instead of it be like the only thing that matters is the meet on November 23rd. So I would push back the date to maybe make it like a December, like post Thanksgiving.
Okay.
So you have a little longer of a regular season. And I would make the regular season matter by saying, hey, if you run well in the regular season, you get a bye uh to like maybe have two qualifying rounds, right? Because the whole idea is
Hmm.
that Nuttycombe and Prenats is like a virtual qualifying round. So basically,
Yeah.
why don't we why don't we do this? Why don't we push like conferences to like mid October, right? So the
Okay.
season starts September 1st, right? So that means there's 6 weeks until conferences, right? And basically, you want people to run every 2 weeks, right? So let's have people run uh September, beginning of September, mid September, beginning of October, mid October, beginning of November, mid November, beginning of December. So that is 7 weekends, right? So the last weekend
Hmm.
will be NCAAs. Okay, so hold on. So wait, the fourth weekend will be conferences. So you have 3 weekends of regular season tune-ups before conferences, right? So you have conferences on the fourth weekend. On the fifth
Hmm.
weekend is the first round, right? And that's with the people who did not have good regular seasons, did not win conferences. They got to run that fifth weekend. They qualify to the sixth weekend to race everyone else in like a second regional, and then that second regional narrows it down to 12, and then they have it at their final the seventh. So you have like one weekend off for the big finale. But like, I just think it would be cooler if like there was more of like an elimination factor. Like
Yeah.
it's kind of like I personally like the way we do it for outdoor track with like, yeah, it's
Hmm.
48, but it's kind of cool. It goes from 48 to 24 to 12 to well, no, it
Yeah.
goes from 96 to 48 to 24 to 8. Like that's kind of like a
Yeah.
boom, boom, boom. And I think we kind of should do that in cross. So
You touched on what I was going to say, which was just make this a three-step process as opposed to a two-step process. And if that means
yeah,
lengthening the season, that means lengthening the season. Because I got to be honest, I don't like the points. I think anytime you're trying to create a regular season in cross country or track, it's just going to be hard. It's a square peg in a round hole. So just forget about all that. If people want to run at Nuttycombe because it's a great competition and they want to test their guys, they can do that. Or the women on their team, they can do that. But if not, they don't have to. Conference, you can do it if you want to. You don't have to. But then you have a first round, which would look like our current regional system, right? And then that narrows it down. And then they qualify onto a second round, which then gets it down to what 24 teams, or if you want to be extreme and go to 12, that's fine. But the point being, at least we'd get three really interesting weekends of
yeah,
competition, and there would be pure drama, and you would not need to do math to figure it out other than who has the lowest score. Okay, top six in this region are advancing. Oh, that was crazy. That sixth team beat the seventh team by 4 points. Like, that's nuts.
yeah,
And then you have these cool Cinderella stories where it's like maybe a team that wasn't even supposed to get out of the first round makes it all the way to nationals. Yeah, now they have to run against Colorado and NAU and BYU and New Mexico and all these crazy power teams. But they at least had that little run
and they had
to
that
get there
journey. Yeah,
because and we thought that they were the 45th best team, and it turns out they were the 23rd best team, and the difference in those two numbers meant they got these extra couple weeks of having a great experience and a great story. I kind of like that more than trying to figure out how to make the regular season matter when the good teams are always just going to play games with it because they can, and they will with this
Y-
one too. but fewer will be able to do it because we just have that hard number, and then you move on from there.
Yeah, no, and I agree. It's the whole. I mean, we kind of already do have a 3-step process. It's just that first step is a weird step, and that first step is the Nutty Comb pre-nat weekend, right? Where like that's where all the best
Yeah.
teams go, and they all run in, they do their fake qualifying for the points, right? And then they have the real qualifying at regionals, right? So why don't you take
Yeah.
out that, use that weekend? People are already gathering in these super type regional systems, which is pre-nats and Nuttycombe, and use that weekend for conferences, use the conference weekend for this new first round, and then use
Hmm.
regionals weekend for regionals. And, but yeah, I think it would be cooler if it's like, you know, if we come out of, if we have the 9 regions, go from 9 regions to 4 regions or whatever, or make it 10, right? So you go 10 and then to 5 or something. I don't know. 10, yeah, go
Yeah.
from 10 regions to 5 regions, and then that 5 regions go to, you know, 20, 15 teams.
Well,
I
what
just
you could,
think NCAAs would be cooler. I mean, people love that it's 255 athletes and like the mass makes the meet so cool. Yeah, but I also think it would be even cooler if it was like the elite of the elite and like we saw like actual strategy and games being played. And it was like, all right, what's going on? Like, ooh, you know, people, one of the most entertaining races that I've ever witnessed was the 4 by mile at Penn Relays, where it was just all strategy. Yes, they were
oh man,
walking, but that made it like more dramatic. I mean, people say they hate it, but it
you're losing me
was,
on that one, but okay.
but no, it was a mental game because they all knew what Ches does, right? And they were all trying to play the game against Ches, and it was a chess match. And it was like, it was the first time we actually
Yeah.
knew what the runners were thinking. We like they weren't like they knew Chez's game and they were trying to beat him at his own game, right? And that was cool because it was actual competition. It wasn't just like we run and we try to run fast. It wasn't like dumb running. It was actually like, all right, hold on. Chez
It got
wants
kind of
to
dumb
never
though.
lead.
It got pretty preposterous though. I'm with you in terms of the strategy, but when they were running 630 miles or whatever they were on that second to last lap, it was pretty ridiculous. I get your point. But here's the other cool benefit to this, right? And we're talking about this in a world where we have a perfect scenario. You do that first region, right? And then you can seed the teams. Then you can
Yeah,
seed them into four regions, say, and that gives an incentive for teams to run at least a little bit hard in the first round. And then if you seed them into regions, you don't need to worry about the belly aching and the complaining about, well, this at-large team. No, you could do every region gets 5 teams, and that's it. And if you're sixth, tough. You got put into a
yeah,
tough draw. That's how it works. Where every region gets 4, and then you move on, and you have 16 teams at the national meet, or you have 20 teams or 25, whatever you want to do. But it would just allow a sorting that would be fair. It wouldn't be, let's make up, this team beat, as you mentioned yesterday, a lot of it just coming down to luck, right? When you factor in all the cold loss points and things like that, you could say, hey, everybody shows up on region, they run it. From there, you have a seed, and then you go to your next step in the process, and then you qualify from there. Conference, I think conference is the one meet that can stand alone because people want to win their conference. Most teams want to win their conference or finish as high as they can. So that meet would still be interesting. But I would trade a qualification step, that meet being interesting where it's clear cut. I would rather have that than a mid-season meet like we see now, like you're mentioning, with a where all the good teams go and they try to get points at a Nuttycombe or a pre-nats. Like I would trade those two
yeah.
for each other.
Yeah, and I mean it's easy to do too. The time slot's there, right? You shift conferences up 2 weeks, and then use the
Mm-hmm.
conference weekend for this new round that we created. Um, yeah, and then even like you could easily have like two like we already do it with like like with a 2 site weekend meet, right? Where we do that, where we have the big meet happening in Wisconsin and the big meet happening in Terre Haute. Like we
Mm-hmm.
already do it. We just could make it more like official, which would be cooler.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
Yeah. And if people are
anyway,
like, hey, that's an extra 10K that they have to run, my response would be, if you can't do your sport often enough times for people to pay attention to your sport, then you have a problem. Right? And I don't know if that means changing the distance to 8K or moving things around, but if it's a situation where, oh, this is unreasonable, well, then maybe you need to ask other questions, because all we're basically saying is these athletes need to compete 5 times in a year, 6 times in a year in a season. That's not, I don't think that's too much to ask. And maybe you need to play around with your roster a little bit. Dave Smith talked about that, like depending on it with the qualifying process, you build your team a different way. But I think it should be built from the perspective of like what's going to make the most sense for the sport. This is what, I don't know how it was when you went to high school, but isn't this pretty similar to most high school qualification processes in the country? You have a district step, a regional step, or a super regional, or a section step, and then you get to state, right? That's the whole idea of it. They're not really going in and figuring out points at like the Woodbridge Invitational or Mount Sac Invitational, right? It's you get to the end of the season and you have all, and you got to get through the gauntlet. You got to get through the ringer of the entire thing.
Yeah. Not all states have 3 rounds, but Pennsylvania only has
Sure.
2. But it's the same thing where Pennsylvania, it was top 2 and you're in. And in order to get the at-large spot, you had to like run. Well, in track, you just had to run a time. But
yeah,
for cross country, I don't think there was any at-large picks. It was just like top 2 at the districts. Each district had a certain number that they get to qualify. So if you have a good district, you get top 4. If you have a shitty district, you get top 2 or something like that. But
yeah. And you could use going back to seeding and the idea of you could use results from the early season meets and conference to seed that initial region. Now, would the power teams really be worried about that? No, because they would be fine. But it would create some sort of incentive to try to get a better seed, to try to get in a more navigable region. And who would be on that committee to pick it? That would be you, obviously, and you alone. You would just get because look, that's like, to me, sorting out who goes in the first round. Yeah, some people will complain about it, but it's ultimately they have a chance to rectify it, right? And you're splitting teams up into 9 regions. No one's going to be that impacted by it. And in my scenario, I think you send everybody still to that one, and then you cut it down, and then you cut it down again. So that way everybody would still get to run the same amount of meets that they're running now if they wanted to, but then you just add that extra step into qualifying, as opposed to sending fewer teams to the region and then the same amount of teams to the championship, which is strange. I just wanted to get your thoughts on that because you guys were picking it apart, but I want to know your ideas, your plans.
Yeah. Well, it also sounds like you're listening to that pod just screaming to have a mic. You know, you're like, why can I be in this conversation? Because we're what, like 15 minutes into this pod, and you're just trying to extend the Monday pod.
This is actually the wrap-up show for Monday. This is the post show. I usually am screaming, but no, I thought it was a really good conversation. I enjoyed the Beneath the Grandstand episode with Dave Smith as well too. But it just got me thinking, like, how did we get to this point? How did it get so complicated? Cross country should be pretty easy, and I know Dave Smith talked about the idea of making cross country and track like every other sport, which is always the problem, but it happens all the time. It's the basketballification of cross country. Sports are different, and you can treat them differently, and the template is clearly in how the high school system works. Let's just follow that, and I think it would add some level of interest to it, as opposed to just this one step thing. But
what if we did a thing where we had instead of we send like you send you send 20, I don't know, 30 or 20 teams to NCAAs, and they run a 5K on a Friday, and then the top whatever teams qualify for the Sunday 5K. You know,
now
like
you're
that's
how now you're getting drunk with
power. That's how the
power.
Final Four works. That's how the Final Four works, right? Or they have 4 teams play on Saturday, and then the 2 winners play each other on Monday. So why don't we
whittle it down to 1-on-1?
Yeah, just keep whittling it down, and then how cool would it be if like the final was like a BYU NAU dual meet, like at the end, and they just been through the ringer, they're tired, they got the legs, they're just one last round. Both coaches are mic'd up live. It'll be epic. And you have 2 different broadcasts. You have like one broadcast with like with Jared Ward doing commentary. Another broadcast with Matt Baxter doing commentary. Man, it'll be great.
Uh, I think 16 is the fewest you could sell me on in terms of teams because I do like that big. I do like that big start. Um, what's the like this year? How many teams? Like on the women's side, we thought okay, there might be 6 teams that could win it, 5 teams that could win it in a scenario. I think it's rare when you get a situation where it's okay, 10 teams could win it, but the 16th best team could maybe sneak onto the podium in some years too, and that's a significant achievement too. So 16 is fine. I would still say, okay, even 20 or 30. My desire is to just have that extra round to raise the stakes, to have one more interesting meet that would force people to run hard. All this is about convincing them to do the thing that we're interested in watching them do, which is just play the sport hard. Do the running thing. We like watching you run. Do that more. That's all we want, right?
Talk about how it would be great for the 16 team to get fourth, and that's a great achievement. How many sports honor
It is though,
fourth
right?
place? How many sports honor fourth place the way cross country honors fourth place?
Well, you should brought
Like
about
it's
you should brought up the
basketball.
final. Okay, bowl games, 1 million teams get a trophy and get to end their season as the Car Care Bowl champions. That's pretty much the same thing, right? Or maybe even
No, it's
worse.
not. That is, but like, there's not like an award for fourth. Like even in Final Four, I guess the award is that you have a potential to win, not that you got fourth. Like there's no award for the losing team in the Final Four. I don't know.
Well,
It's just
this is like what this is what Dave Smith brought up though about how it's different, right? He when he goes to NCAA's, he's competing against 30 other teams, but it just happens that they're competing all at the same time. So the idea that you are celebrating fourth is the fact that you beat the 31st team, you beat the 30th team, you beat the 29th. Like you made it all the way in a way. If this was basketball or football, you made your way to that
into the Final Four.
step. Yeah. The difference is you just did it in 20 minutes. And then you also lost to 3 other people in your semifinal or your championship or whatever it is. All this stuff is happening simultaneously. That's the difference. So that's why you recognize the fourth place is the cumulative effect of all that you did to get there. Doesn't that
Got
make
it.
sense? That makes
Yeah.
sense, right?
Well, just
It's a different sport. It's a different sport.
yeah, it's a different
Like
sport.
you would definitely, especially if your team was an underdog and they made it, if you were a 12 seed or a 10 seed and you made it to the final four and then you got blown out in the first round, even if you got blown out, you'd say, wow, that was a crazy story. And look at all the recognition that they got on the way to the final four. They beat 4 teams. They made it out of the regional. That's crazy. This team had a great season. You'd say that same thing. I don't know if they get a plaque. I don't know how that works, but the recognition would definitely be there. Like we applaud fourth place all the time. We do. We just do it in a different way than we do it in cross country or track. Figuring
Yeah,
out
I guess
track
it's
though,
true.
you're right. I think the track system right now is the best of all the available options. I would not be in favor of changing the track system right now. I
Yeah,
like
it's
it.
just like boom, boom, boom.
Mhm.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
not
boom, boom,
the
boom. That's
regionals.
all I got to say. Boom,
Well,
boom, boom.
well, the first round, it's not the most exciting to watch because the really good people can glide through. But then I went to the 2018 West Regional where Michael Norman split whatever he did, 43 something, and Devin Dixon was right on him, and Rye Benjamin ran stupid fast in the 400 hurdles, and a whole bunch of people in the women's 5 and 10 ran really, really hard. A lot of those athletes take that step very seriously because they don't want to mess around. So it's still a good meet. It's still a good meet. It's not the drama of what comes 2 weeks later, but it's still a good meet.
But could you argue though that maybe we don't need 48 per East and West, that you really need 24? Because how many
Yeah,
25th to 48th ranked athletes are making an NCAA final?
I get that. So you just shrink the time, or would you
Yeah.
add that into the? You'd still keep the separate site and the separate date though.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could just
Cut out around.
have Yeah, cut out a round and say top
Mm-hmm.
24 from the East and top 24 from the West get to go to the regionals. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I
And
mean,
then
the
get
reason
that
why it's
down to
48 is because every coach and their mom wants to say, I had an NCAA qualifier, right? So
yeah.
it gives another 24, participation awards to all these coaches and athletes for their programs to be like, hey, instead of saying I qualified 3 athletes to the NCAA first round, they could say I qualified 12, even though the other 9 were never ever going to make any impact because they were ranked 45th. But if you have like 9 45th ranked athletes, all of a sudden you look like a pretty deep team.
Do me a favor. Log on to Tifers right now. What was Morgan McDonald's ranking in the 5,000 last year during the
Okay,
regular
well,
season?
that obviously is skewed because he obviously purposely was doing that. But what was he,
Well,
West?
you know what I mean. I guess that's another benefit. It would make them run faster in the regular season because they
Yeah,
couldn't mess around.
100%.
Yeah, because I think he just ran.
So
He ran like 1350, didn't he, or something like that at Brian Clay? He
he
jogged the V Heat,
he was ranked
if
he
I'm
was ranked
remembering this.
31st. He was ranked 31st.
So you would exclude the NCAA 5,000 meter champion, is what you're saying,
Okay,
in
you
your
know that
system?
he did that on purpose. He would have had to run 13:47. I'm sure he could have ran 13:47.
Don't know. He's a 1314 guy. I'm not sure if he could have run 1347. I get your point. I understand. I guess it does create a little bit of a cushion to make sure that you can get people there, especially with the quick turnaround between indoors and outdoors. All right. You guys talked
Talk
about
about the
Nick Willis
topic of the
yesterday.
day.
We
Oh,
should
well,
talk
did
about the
Nick Willis
topic of the day.
announced?
I don't know. Do you want to check that before we keep going here? We don't. That was a
It's
very
Tuesday
spirited
morning.
conversation.
I think I'm
It's a very
100% right,
spirited.
by the way. I think he signed with a low
Uh,
tier company.
you were parsing the vocabulary in a way that was persuasive. So,
Parsing the vocabulary. Whoa, that's a very impressive way to say of how I talk.
well, because you were looking at each individual word and saying, well, he's not going to go with Nike because he's too laudatory of Adidas. And then you also said something to the effect of um, exciting announcement coming Tuesday. Although Lincoln did say um, it's not going to be retirement because of the exciting announcement thing. You wouldn't say that. Um,
But
I
he's
thought it
trying to
was.
pump up a low level sponsor. That's all he's trying to do.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. He tweets a lot about the NBA. That's why I appreciate Nick Willis. He likes track and the NBA, so he's one of us. Nothing yet. I just looked at his Twitter, so nothing here.
Yeah.
Yes, topic of the day, Diamond League. I don't really know how much we can discuss with this though. We have the dates in August, starting in Monaco. There's just still a lot of unanswered questions because they said some of these are going to be one-offs. Some of these might follow a regular Diamond League format. Some may not. They're just giving the freedom to do whatever they like. There is no Diamond League final though. That's been canceled. Zurich will get to host it at a later date. London's been canceled and Rabat has been canceled. So there's been 3 that have been canceled. The interesting one for fans in the US, pre-classic, is going to be in October. Was it October 4th?
Yeah, the same day as the
Which
London
is
Marathon.
on a Sunday, and it's the day, I looked this up, a day after Oregon Washington football game. And anybody who's been to Eugene knows hotel rooms are at a premium, particularly if there's a Oregon Washington football game. Now we don't know if the Oregon Washington football game is going to go off, so that would obviously change things dramatically there. Do you think that they will revisit the idea of achieving world standards or Olympic standards, which are now
Yeah.
suspended until December 1st because of this? Or do you think because the drug testing issue is still so tough that they'll just keep it unofficial for
No,
now?
you gotta, if people run fast at an a World Athletics sanctioned meet, you gotta give them the standard. Like you can't just be like, oh, you don't get it. No, I think they're gonna give them to them. That's my opinion on
Mm-hmm.
this. So I'm looking.
I,
We're seeing the dates here on the bottom of the screen. I just want to see the combination of the major marathons with these diamond leagues. Like
oh man, it's nuts.
I mean, you're gonna have Diamond League two days later, Diamond League. 2 days later, Diamond League, and then like 6 days later, Boston Marathon. Like Boston Marathon is September 14th, and then September 17th is the Rome Diamond League. Like it's gonna be wild. I think it's
Mhm.
kind of cool. Like you have the Berlin Marathon, which is that got moved though, right? Berlin Marathon got moved.
Yes,
Okay.
they haven't said officially, but yeah, it looks like it's been moved. Yeah, if all this stuff goes off and NCAA cross happens, September and October in the running world is going to be very busy. Like, just looking
Well,
at all these dates.
there's gonna be a Diamond League in China the same day as the Nuttycombe, Wisconsin invite,
Hmm.
and the
Maybe
World
some tough
Athletics Half
choices
Marathon.
for. Oh, the half marathon championships is the same day as the
Well,
Shanghai Diamond League.
the reason why I'm well, one thought that I've always had is we should do a big pod on this of how Gordon can solve track and field in 1 hour, which
I
we
think
should save
that's every
for
day.
but we'll save that
Make
for
you
a
do that
pod
every.
later on this summer. But it basically comes down to the whole creating a four major system as opposed to a one global championship system, a la the way golf does it, the way tennis does it, where there's four championships, not one. And we should have four championships, not one. But it all is tied around the anchor of each of these 4 weekends would be a 4-day championship with the Sunday being a major marathon. And
Mhm.
seeing these high level diamond leagues being so close to a high level major marathon, you can kind of visualize what it's like to have track on a Saturday and then Sunday morning you have a major marathon. It's kind of a cool, or even a major marathon Sunday morning and then Sunday night you have a track meet. It's
Mhm.
kind of a interesting viewer
Yeah,
experience to have the combination of both elite track and elite road running. So
jam it
I'm
all in there
excited for that.
together. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I think a lot of these. I mean, we'll just have to wait and see. But a lot of these could end up. The fields could end up being pared down, like we're seeing with the Impossible Games, where it's just a select number of events and a select number of athletes, maybe that are geographically nearby. So if you're a U.S. athlete, you got Eugene, obviously, and then what's the next closest? I mean, this isn't any different than any other year. Ever since they took the New York Diamond League away, but then everything else is Europe, 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 right? Or
Well, one
Asia.
thing I'm thinking about, if the Eugene meet is happening on October 4th, that means some like local, like, like will Portland Track Festival put on a meet like the weekend before, the weekend after, or
USA's
like
maybe.
will USA's create a September USA meet? Like, I
Hmm.
think if we're gonna have a elite, domestic track meet on October 4th, you think the agents and the other local meet directors around the country are gonna be like, hey, well, maybe we can create something around that date, where
Hmm.
give people something 3 weeks out to tune up for it, or 2 weeks later after they run it, because
Yeah,
Portland Track Festival gets a lot of like people who are getting ready for Prefontaine or post Prefontaine, you know what I mean? So that might be
yeah.
a thought. So
I'm wondering with the we just don't know about the budgets of these places too. Like, what's the situation going to be of like are they going to be able to pay out time bonuses? Are they going to be, what's the appearance fee process going to be for a lot of these meets? Is it like how much is that going to impact them? I could be I could be wrong on this just because the guests that we've had on the pod have been primarily distance runners, but all of them have said they wanted to run. So I'm inclined to believe that we would see more representation from distance and mid distance folks than we would from sprinters. And the reason I think that is just because the technical component and also the chance of injury being higher. Do you see it the same way?
yeah, but I also think that if they're going to give money to anyone, they're going to give appearance money to a sprinter. So, I think it's going to be like, do we think Noah Lyles will compete in this? I think he would.
I like how we always use Will Noah Lyles do this thing. I just think it's tough, right? Lopez Lemon can go out and run and get somewhat close to what he would do on the track, right? He can run around the streets of Portland. Shelby Hooligan can run around the streets of Portland. Is it the exact same thing as spiking up and getting a bunch of tune-up races? No. But like the sprinters that you're talking about, like They're not working on block starts on tracks. You know, that's what makes me like Allison Felix is
Yeah, they
literally running
are.
up and down
Are
a
they not?
street.
They could
No,
get
I mean
tracked.
Lyles is working out on grass. That's what he said before. He did not have access to a track. He was working out on grass. Felix is working out on the street. We've seen video of that. Coleman was having to jump a gate to get into a track until eventually he stopped. The weight
I mean, I don't know.
facilities. Now, distance
I've
runners
been
need weight facilities too, but you've been running on a track, I know, but you've discussed what type of track that is. I don't think that's IAAF certified type
yeah,
of
but it's
track.
still like I don't know. I just feel like it's easier to get. Maybe because I live in Texas and it's easier to get on tracks in Texas. Maybe that's why. I don't know.
It's different everywhere. I'm just saying that and not even to mention field events, right? And the equipment that they need. The technical component makes me think that we would see distance runners get back to a form that they had in previous years before we would see that from sprinters. That's just a guess. That's just my and hurdlers and other technical event people.
Now I know if Lincoln's listened to this pod, he's probably throwing the phone against his wall, being like, "There's no way this is happening. We're in the
He's got
middle
a
of
new
a
house.
pandemic.
He's not going to throw his
Why are we
phone anywhere.
talking about track meets happening in the fall? How dare they?" But we do see a trend starting with the sports world, with starting to come up with ideas and plans, and even implementing these plans to start bringing back sports during this time that we're in. I mean, UFC did an event literally this past weekend with no fans. From all we know, it seemed like it was a success, right? Health wise, I don't think anyone was,
Well, that was the
I don't
one where
think
the guy tested positive before, right? Didn't a
he
fighter
wasn't on the
test
card,
positive?
but
Yeah,
they took
they
him off
took
the
him
card,
off.
right? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think.
So,
Yeah,
but like
yeah,
overall, the event happened without a hitch
yeah,
for the people
yeah.
that participated in the event. And as basketball fans, basketball is starting to talk about how they are thinking about doing the bubble system with having two sites to play all their games, starting in sometime mid-June, end of June, early July. Baseball has already come up with the proposal to do an 80-game season starting in July, I believe. NASCAR's coming
Yeah.
back, but that's in the car, whatever. But like sports are starting to come back, right?
It
And I
isn't a
think
car.
that
I just
sports are starting to
checked.
come back, and I think
Yeah,
that the World Athletics is noticing that, and they're thinking like, hey, we should have a plan too. We can't just live in the
yeah.
world where 2021, that's when everything's gonna be fine, because you're just as hopeful by saying everything. For someone who
Mhm.
says we shouldn't be thinking about sports till 2021 has the same leap of faith as someone says we should think about sports in 2020 fall. Like, what's the difference between 2020
Yeah,
fall and 2021? Nothing. It's just it's a days. If you can't say 2021, why don't we wait till 2022? You know what? Let's wait till 2024. You know what? Let's wait till 2029. That's when we know everything's gonna be okay. You can always push it back, right? So there's
well,
never a
that last part's a little extreme, but I take your point in terms of like November 2020 versus February 2021. That's only 4 months apart, right? And the medical treatment may not be vastly different between November and February. I take your
yeah,
point there. The unique challenge that track has compared to these major team sports, right, is just the amount of people from all over the world that compete. Then there's no central governing structure. Like, yes, there's a governing body, but like we know this from everything else in track. It's not like everybody's taking directives from them, right? You have your shoe sponsor, you have your local governing body, and then you have the international governing body. A little bit different than the NBA, where the league is paying out these salaries to the players, or the Major League Baseball, where the league is paying out salaries to the players. The other
or
part
like how
is,
UFC, they're under contract with UFC, the fighters. Yeah.
oh really? Yes, I don't know a ton about UFC, but UFC obviously easier too. You get two people together, you test them, and you do it right.
Yeah.
That's tough to with the track meet. You need to have more people involved. So I think we'll see something. It just in a matter of how we see it, and it's going to be different than what we saw obviously before. Not to mention fans. The other thing is they have NBA has an incentive to come back, right? Put it on TV. People will pay a lot of money for it. you and I would definitely die and be super pumped to get some track in our life, right? But there's not the global. I mean, people did like the Ultimate Garden Clash. I will say that people did like the Ultimate Garden Clash, but there's not. Track is more doing it, I think, just because they want to stay relevant, want to stay in the conversation, want to give people a chance to compete this year. Whereas those other sports have these huge television contracts hanging out there. I mean, that has to be part of it too, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm also just thinking about if the NBA gets pushed back and it's happening and the finals are happening in September, as long along with NFL
The
football
NFL and every other sport,
and
yeah.
major marathons and now the Diamond League, it's gonna be a wild fall. Like we're gonna overdose on sports in the fall. Like I think we are doing a cleanse right now, and then we're gonna we're gonna we're gonna go
We'll
hard
be sick of
in
sports.
fall.
Yeah.
Like, it's gonna be bad. Like we're gonna overdose hard on this fall. We're gonna go on a banger. Yeah. So
Yeah.
uh
It's just yeah. It's just tough. It's just tough to admit. Like I've read the NBA proposals, and it's difficult to imagine that level of a structure set up for track. It's just difficult to figure out. I mean, you could maybe you get a pool of athletes, right? And they all test, but they just announce all these different sites. They're not running every week in Orlando. They're not running every week in Las Vegas. They're going to go from Monaco to Italy to the United States to Doha.
yeah.
Like they're going all throughout the world. And even if you wanted to keep them in a pod, it's just difficult. It's just not the way track is administered. Um, One more story I wanted to get your thought on. Have you been reading the Ted Ginn Jr. saying he beat Usain Bolt in a relay 15 years ago story?
I have. I also know Ted Ginn Jr. is not new to talking about his running career.
He's fast. He's fast. Legitimately good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Hurdler
think
in high
he.
school.
What's his PRs?
I think he ran 13 mid in high school on I'm guessing that's the high school heights there in hurdles. And then I think he ran 46.5 in a 400 in high school. And I looked last night. He got second in Arcadia, which is a very good meet in high school. So he's very good. No one has been able to pin down and find the exact moment when he beat Usain Bolt. And what do you think of someone claiming victory if you beat them in a relay? Because I don't think that should count.
Yeah, definitely should not count, especially if we're even the same one. Yeah, the only way you could kind of count it is if you get the stick at the same time and it's a 4x4. Then you could say maybe you beat the
Yes.
guy. But
Yeah.
4x1, different leg, different heat. No, that is ridiculous. But Ted Ginn Jr. has a history to talk about his speed. So back in 2019, a year ago, he was on a podcast on Bleacher Report, the Lefko Show, a podcast I listen to. Lefko, shout out, he's a great podcast host, also a Philly guy.
They needed
But
they needed some help.
he said he would race anyone for $10,000, saying he's the fastest wide receiver in the NFL and is willing to race anyone for 10 grand. And guess who quote tweeted that interview clip with just the
Matthew
word
Bowling.
bet? Matthew Bowling. Matthew Bowling was like, bring it. Because Bowling would probably
That's
smoke
awesome.
Ted Ginn Jr. And then obviously nothing ever happened, right? But Ted is very
He's going to
notorious.
college. He's not getting 10 grand.
He's very notorious on bragging about his speed. I'm sure he's had speed, but like he's not even the fastest in the NFL. I'm sorry, but what's his name? The Kansas City guy. Tyreek Hill is faster than him. Just like no matter, like he was faster than them both in high school and he's faster than them now. So and like maybe he thinks that he's talking to like he's not going to get called out because people just take his word for it when track world will be like, no, you're kidding me. Bolt's better than everyone that's ever lived. So when like you bragging about that, you're going to get called out by our community. But he realizes that our community is a lot smaller than the blogosphere community and like the NFL fan community, that he can get away with it. So I mean, it is ironic though, bragging about a real. I mean, I do the same thing. I brag about the time I held off Leo Manzano in a 4x8. So I'll hold on to that.
Yeah, people were trying to figure it out. I saw John Galt had found like the 2004 Penn relays because that's what he thought it was. And Ginn's team won the 4x1, but Bolt's team didn't like was in a different section. So he's like, I don't know, and didn't like make the final. Like I don't think they ever raced. They didn't even like they weren't even on the track at the same time, is what it sounded like. So
Well,
I
you
don't know
say
if
it's a
he.
timed final, right? So technically, you won. You beat him in the timed
But
final.
that's insane because not only were you not on the track at the same time with them, you're talking about a relay. That's absolutely insane. That is a weird way to talk
But
about
technically, he did beat Bolt on a technicality,
his
right? Like in a rule of
his team
law,
beat Bolt. His
but
team beat Bolt. You
he.
could say that.
All right, all right. Hold on, wait. Okay, did Michael Jordan beat the the Knicks, or did his team beat the Knicks? People say Michael
Will
Jordan beat the
Purdue.
Knicks.
Will Purdue beat the damn Knicks. That's who
Right,
beat the
We're
Knicks.
we're okay to give people. You can't like that is a
Well, if you,
that you. Did Tom
I mean,
Brady win the
when
Super Bowl, or did the Patriots win the Super Bowl?
we'll find out next year, when now that Brady's not on the Patriots. Listen, it's both. We know that there's uneven relay teams out there in history. It's one of my favorite things. So, the to
So
say
I'm
that
saying
you
on
beat
technicality
somebody,
though, he's right on the technicality. That's all I'm saying.
no, he could say he's 100% wrong. He can say his team beat Bolt's team. That's fine. Also, Bolt's like 3 years younger than him too, so and I don't know Bolt's teammates, but it's basically a team of seniors talking about how they beat a team of freshmen. It's very strange, or sophomores. Uh, but no,
Just
you
put yourself in his
can't.
shoes, though,
Were
Kevin.
you at
Put
the O
yourself
four
in
Penn
his shoes.
relays?
I'm just
Were you
saying.
there? Were you at
If
this meet? Did you watch it? Did you see him finish in front of him?
I'm just saying, put
You're a
yourself
Philly
in his
guy.
shoes. If you were in a 4x8 and your 4x8 beat a 4x8 that had David Rudisha in it, you would tell people. You'd be like, "Yeah, I beat David Rudisha." You'd say it. You would. You wouldn't. Oh, you wouldn't be like, "No, technically, I didn't beat him." You freaking have on your banner of your Twitter a photo of you racing Meb in
Uh,
in a in a
yes, I'm
in a marathon.
photobombing Meb. If you get the whole photo, everybody else is holding hands, and I just wanted to get in the shot, so I stuck my head right in there.
But
It's
but you
90
want
minute
to you want to
half.
pretend that you're in a race with him, right? That's what you're doing that photo
No, it's
for,
a joke.
right?
No, that was a joke. I wasn't. No, I'm not gonna
Yeah,
say
it's a
I beat
joke.
Meb. It's
It's
a
a
joke.
joke. No, obviously it's a joke. It's like a friendly joke and be like, "Yeah, I was in a race." Right. And that's
Ginn's
brother
not
Ted Ginn.
joking.
Like, is
No, he's
he
not joking.
not?
He's 100. No, he's completely. Listen. People much slower than him have deluded themselves into thinking they're faster than the fastest people in the world. And Ted Ginn Jr., as we mentioned, when he was in high school, was legitimately fast. So I think he legitimately thinks and considers himself being able to beat Bolt. If this was an open 100 and he beat him and he ran faster in a different section, okay, still not quite the same thing because we know how the hundreds run. Maybe the wind shifted, but whatever. You could say I finished ahead of him in the results. That's fine. But to claim it on a relay, on a 4x1, because you're right, 4x4, you get the stick at the same time. That's one thing, right? Like if I got the stick at the same time as Michael Norman and Michael Norman did what he did and beat me, Michael Norman could claim that he is better than me and he would be absolutely right. But on a 4x1, when you're not even in the same heat, were people taking you were in Philadelphia then? Were people taking splits on 4x1s at the 2004 Penn Relays? Was that a thing that was happening? Was that publicized? Is that put in the Philly Inquirer? Was Allen Iverson talking about this in press conferences?
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole issue with way certain individuals approach track, like react, talk about their track and field resume, right? There's
Mm-hmm.
sprinters who love to say they're a 10-1 guy when really fully automatic when legal they're a 10-5 guy, but they had
Right.
that 1 8 mile per hour wind with hand time, they can call themselves a 10-1 guy, but it's not true,
Right.
right?
Right.
So
Right.
I think a lot of athletes love to be kind of liberal with their resume building, and he went even extreme with the whole well, relays count as relays are races too, right? So
Yeah.
I mean, I think he's a little bit trolling. I think he knows that he's not faster than Bolt. But no, he may be. I mean, some people who are elite athletes, and he's obviously a great athlete because he made it to the NFL and he stayed in the NFL. They need to have that mentality that they're better than everyone, right? They need to think that.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of athletes think they're the best athlete of all time, even though they're like the 1000th athlete of all time, right? But they had the
Mm-hmm.
mentality of I'm the best, and so maybe that's what he's doing. He's like he probably just thinks he can beat anyone, right? Most runners think they can beat anyone, right? They don't have like, well, yeah, no,
Yeah,
I'm I'm brag I'm the 42nd best. No, they all think I'm the best, right?
that is a characteristic. You're right. You're right. That's why I think he thinks it's true. That's why I 100% think he thinks it's true. I thought you were going to get in your obligatory last dance comments there because you talk about it every pod, and we haven't talked since episodes 7 and 8 came out.
It was great. There's a lot of good Jordan reactions to that last dance. I keep on trying to think of how I'm going to use them during track meets when with Jordan laughing, like how I can use what him like watching like a. I think I got to find like a video of like so maybe someone on the pod listener can make this mashup and send it to us and we'll post it. But like a video of like Jordan when he's looking at the iPad and then he laughs about like reacting to it. Show like a video of like someone getting caught in like a 4x1 or something like that, or getting caught in a 4x4 and just laughing at them or
Mm-hmm.
something. I don't know, something funny. Or
Or
an
audio of
interview
Ted
of Grant
Ginn.
Holloway just saying something ridiculous and then Jordan just laughing.
Yeah. I mean, the laugh was great when he was shown the thing about Gary Payton, just the dismissiveness of which he cracked. And Jordan cried too. It got pretty deep. It got
Would you
pretty
say
deep.
that Ted Ginn Jr. saying he is better than Bolt or would have been better than Bolt is the bold like the most hot take that an athlete has ever had when it comes to track and field? Can you think of a hotter take?
I mean, Adrian Peterson said he's going to make the team in the 400 when he got suspended for the NFL. I remember that. Um, there's been a lot of soccer/rugby players that get lifted up, but that's not them usually. That's someone around them saying, I crunched the numbers and their average speed is better than this. So I'd probably
Yeah.
put it. Yeah, I would put
I
it.
mean,
I'd probably put it ahead of it because you're talking about beating the greatest person of all time. You're not just talking about making an Olympic team.
and I think it's different when a media member does it because all the media were saying like bowling ran faster than Bolt because they like took
Yeah,
his whatever and say, oh, it was faster than the Olympic final. But
right.
that's all. Media is just media doing that thing. But an athlete saying that
Yeah,
they
the media.
would have beaten them is a little different, right? I mean, I try and think. Is there like most track athletes don't do that? That's the thing, though, right? Because they know that they can
Yeah,
get caught, right, with their lie because they'll go into a race and then lose and then like get called
yeah,
out. You can say this as an NFL player and never get proven wrong because you never have to like prove it, right? You can use your 40 times and so
yeah.
you kind of get away with it, right?
100%. 100%. I know Ocho Cinco has posted a lot about running and track, but I think he's a lot of times he's a competitive guy and he's joking a lot of the time. Peterson, I think, really believed it. Did Chris Johnson's? I know Chris Johnson had a really fast 40. Did he ever say anything about becoming or beating Bolt? I know he
I'm
raced a
sure.
cheetah one time. And the ultimate clickbait thing. The cheetah wasn't even the same spot as him. It was on the other side of a wall. I wanted to see them go heads up, to see who could win it.
With some put raw meat on his tail and see if he really can
And
outrun the cheetah.
just go. Yeah, yeah. I felt like that was a waste of a half hour of a Discovery Channel program or whatever it was on to find out the truth.
I heard they're
Yeah,
replacing it with the Ultimate Garden Clash for next season.
the cheetah's just chasing people around. It's a mashup with season 2 of Tiger King. They're putting them all together
Yeah.
there. By the way, Shoe King, right? Still out on Netflix?
So it got delayed because of the pandemic, but it's coming out this Friday. So for all the people emailing when's Shoe King coming, it's coming this Friday.
They moved up
You
the
know what else?
Hamilton movie. They
I know.
moved
I was about to
back
say.
Shoe King.
I'm excited for
That
that.
was
I'm
big
gonna
news
watch
in
that.
big news in my house this morning, Gordon. That was big news in my house.
Yeah, that's big news in my brain too. I'm excited for
Very
that.
excited.
Now I don't have to
What?
buy a ticket. Just get to
Oh,
watch
you
it on
still got to
TV.
go. You still got to go,
What do you
man.
mean you
You
still
got to
gotta
go.
go?
You're a theater guy. You're a theater guy,
Yeah, but
which is the
I don't
most
have that. I don't have
surprising
that
thing about
coin.
you.
I don't have that
Oh,
coin.
it's not. Yeah, I've looked over your shoulder when you have your investment account open. You have that coin, definitely.
Dude,
You love the theater. People don't know
we're in
that about
crazy
you.
times, man. Everyone's cash strapped, right? You gotta.
Yeah. Well, you've seen every musical. Don't you think you'd
I
want
know.
to
I
see
do
the
love music.
one?
I do love musicals. We need a track and field musical. I wonder what that would be. I should write that. That could be my way of making it big. No one's ever done a track and field themed musical on Broadway. I just got to find the best character and storyline. And like,
That sounds like
the theater would be in the round, but instead of in the round, it'll be in the oval. So it'll be
oval. Yeah, yeah.
like an oval theater. Ooh,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to start writing this now. I got to bust out my typewriter. Write the musical of. I need to think of a good title. Anyone can email me good musical titles for the first ever track and field story told in song. It'll be great. I think I'll open up in London, West End.
Got to. Yeah, yeah. That makes sense. If it gets canceled, like if these meets that they propose gets canceled and we're really short on topics, I see a July episode where Gordon breaks down his musical, right?
I'm gonna start writing it. Yeah, I'll maybe I can get some of my friends who are great singers to do a little singing to add to it. You know, yeah, get a little dance number. I'll make some TikToks to add to the dance numbers. It'll be great. It'll be good. So,
No comment on the TikTok. I saw what you posted yesterday on Facebook. I'm not gonna respond to that.
Yeah, don't respond to that.
FloTrack podcast at gmail.com is the email address. Thanks to Alon for producing. Thanks to you, Gordon. We will talk to you guys tomorrow.